What if I told you that the most powerful act of strength you'll ever perform won't make a sound? No confrontation, no goodbye speech, no explanations. Just you, quietly choosing peace over the chaos that once defined you. You see, there comes a moment in every person's life when walking away isn't weakness. It's wisdom. It's when you stop fighting battles that were never yours to begin with. When you no longer beg to be understood. Because your energy finally understands itself. Detaching from people, habits, and thoughts that once felt like home, but now feel like prisons, isn't easy. It's brutal. It's lonely. But it's also the beginning of something extraordinary. Because that silent exit, it echoes louder than any argument, any explanation, any scream for validation. The Stoics knew this truth long before we did. They believed real power isn't in how loudly you can fight, but in how calmly you can let go. So why do we keep feeding the noise? Why do we cling to relationships, routines, and mindsets that drain us? Just because we fear the silence that comes after? In this video, we'll explore the art of letting go. The 15 silent removals that can completely transform your life. No anger, no drama, no chaos. Just clarity. If you've ever felt like your soul was outgrowing your surroundings, if you've been craving peace but didn't know where to start, welcome to Stoic Sage Academy. This might just be the first step in your quiet revolution, where strength isn't something you shout. It's something you embody. Let's begin, silently but powerfully. 1. The excuse called tomorrow. Let's be brutally honest. Tomorrow has probably stolen more dreams than failure ever did. Not rejection, not lack of talent. Just delay. That quiet, innocent-sounding thief that whispers, "I'll do it later." It never comes crashing through your life like tragedy. It just seeps in slowly. So softly that you hardly notice how many times you've traded your present for a promise that never arrives. You tell yourself you're waiting for the right moment, for the stars to align, for that spark of clarity or motivation. But days blur into weeks, weeks melt into years, and your someday quietly fades into never. The most dangerous thing about tomorrow is how reasonable it sounds. It doesn't threaten you. It doesn't frighten you. It simply whispers, "Not now," and you believe it, again and again. But here's the truth the Stoics knew. Action doesn't require perfection, only presence. You don't need the perfect plan, all the answers, or a flawless start. You just need to begin, because something powerful awakens the moment you stop waiting and start moving. Not rushing, just moving. One step, one small imperfect motion forward. That first act creates momentum. Momentum builds clarity. Clarity fuels confidence. The very things you've been waiting for often appear after you begin, not before. Waiting doesn't bring certainty. Doing does. And you know what's far worse than failure? Regret. Because failure teaches, it builds, it humbles, it transforms. Regret, on the other hand, corrodes you quietly. It eats away at the what-ifs that never became, "I tried." The saddest truth is this: the things we postpone aren't delayed by logic. They're delayed by fear. Fear of not being ready. Fear of being seen struggling. Fear of starting small. But every master began clumsily. Every legacy began awkwardly. What makes it remarkable is not how it started, but that it started at all. We live in a world obsessed with productivity, yet most people are only busy thinking. They hustle in their minds but stand still in reality. They plan, visualize, and perfect the idea in their head until it feels real, even though it never touched the world. But nothing changes until something moves. That message you're afraid to send, that project you keep revising, that decision you keep postponing, each one silently drains your energy. Avoidance has a weight, and the longer you carry it, the heavier it becomes. There will never be a perfect moment. The doubts will still whisper. The fear will still linger. But so will your desire. And if that desire keeps resurfacing, that's not coincidence. That's your inner self, your logos, trying to break through the fog of hesitation. You don't need a grand epiphany to change your life. Sometimes it begins with a single, quiet choice, the decision to start. Even if it's small, even if it's awkward, even if no one sees it but you. Seneca once wrote, "While we are postponing, life speeds by." You won't understand that fully until one day you look back and realize how many moments slipped through your fingers, how many passions you buried under distractions, how many conversations you avoided because you feared their consequences, how many goals you abandoned before you ever gave them breath. Time doesn't wait for your readiness. It keeps flowing, and you either move with it or watch it disappear in the rearview mirror. Start where you are. Use what you have. Don't underestimate the quiet power of small actions. 5 push-ups today are worth more than the perfect workout plan you'll start next month. 1 messy paragraph today carries more truth than the perfect novel trapped in your head. 1 phone call to someone you love, even with trembling words, matters more than the flawless speech that never leaves your lips. Action builds progress. Progress builds belief, and belief changes everything. When you begin doing the very things you've been avoiding, something beautiful happens. You stop fearing effort. You stop resenting discipline. You begin respecting yourself. That self-respect is the foundation of inner peace. It's not about ticking boxes or chasing perfection. It's about becoming the kind of person who follows through, who keeps promises to themselves, who no longer lets fear disguise itself as logic. Reflection is vital, but reflection without movement decays into rumination. And overthinking is just fear, pretending to be preparation. At some point, you must stop reading about the life you want and start living it, one bold, imperfect, beautiful step at a time. You'll stumble. You'll trip. Maybe you'll fall. But even then, you'll still be further than the version of you that stayed frozen, waiting for perfect conditions that never come. Your life won't transform in a single day, but it can begin to change today. That's what matters, that you stop giving your power to a day that doesn't exist. That you finally realize someday is not on the calendar, only today is. And you, not tomorrow, not next year, not after everything aligns, you are enough to begin right now. 2. The mask you wear for approval. You don't have to pretend anymore. Truly, you don't. That quiet performance you've been putting on, the one designed to make others nod, approve, and stay, it's not who you are. The polite smiles that hide your hurt, the words you swallow to keep the peace, the silence you hold when your truth is begging to be spoken, all of it, it's exhausting. There comes a point where wearing the mask becomes heavier than any reaction your real self could possibly provoke. Heavier than judgment, heavier than rejection. Because at least those things are honest. Maybe your mask began early, in a classroom where fitting in mattered more than feeling seen. Maybe it began at home, where love felt conditional. Maybe it began in a relationship where you learned that being accepted sometimes meant disappearing. It's hard to tell exactly when the pretending began. Only that one day, you looked in the mirror and realized the reflection staring back was edited, piece by piece. You built a version of yourself that felt safe, polished, acceptable, likable. And now that version is so practiced, so automatic, that even you sometimes forget it isn't real. But here's the truth. Being liked for a mask isn't being liked at all. It means they don't actually know you. They know the character you've created to survive. And that's why it never feels fulfilling. You can have 100 people around you, 1,000 compliments, endless approval, and still feel lonely. Because no one has met you. How could they? You've been buried beneath layers of performance, constantly adjusting your tone, your walk, your pace, your laughter, sculpting yourself into the shape that pleases others. But what's the cost of that performance? Your peace, your authenticity, your quiet joy. You think that keeping everyone happy will make you safe. But what if that safety is just a cage made of smiles and I'm fines? It's not selfish to be real. It's not wrong to have opinions, to draw boundaries, to outgrow people who only knew the version of you that kept them comfortable. If being authentic makes someone uncomfortable, that's their discomfort to carry, not yours. You weren't born to perform. You were born to exist, to breathe deeply in your own skin without apology. And yes, letting go of the mask will mean losing people. But you're not really losing them. You're losing the illusion that they were ever truly for you. Because anyone who only loves the version of you that agrees, obeys, and pleases was never loving you. only their reflection in you. You can feel it when it's time to be real. Your body starts to revolt. You walk away from conversations feeling drained. You feel hollow after nodding at something that contradicts everything inside you. That's not fatigue. That's your inner self screaming for air. The Stoics believed in alignment between thought, word, and action. To them, the greatest peace wasn't found in applause, but in integrity. When your words match your beliefs and your actions reflect your values, your soul exhales. Epictetus said, "If you wish to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." Because the moment you choose truth over image, people will misunderstand you. They might call you distant. They might call you cold. But often, that's just the sound of them adjusting to your boundaries. And maybe that's the cost of authenticity, being misread. But it's worth it. Because the alternative is worse. Living your entire life as a diluted version of yourself, just to be liked by people who don't even know you. You weren't put here to be digestible. You were put here to be true. When you start showing up as your real self, something miraculous happens. You stop attracting those who drain you and start drawing in those who see you. People who don't need you to shrink to fit their comfort. People who appreciate your quiet truth, your rough edges, your real laugh, your natural rhythm, and that's a strange kind of peace. The peace that comes when you stop managing everyone's perception of you. You stop replaying conversations in your head. You stop editing yourself mid-sentence. You stop wondering, what did they think? Because suddenly, it doesn't matter. In that silence, something begins to grow. Not arrogance, not rebellion, but self-respect. The kind that doesn't need to prove anything. The kind that simply says, "This is who I am," and that's enough. Letting go of the mask doesn't mean becoming harsh or unkind. It means becoming whole. It means allowing every buried part of you, your voice, your curiosity, your laughter, your limits, to rise back to the surface. At first, it'll feel awkward, vulnerable, maybe even guilty. Because you've been conditioned to believe that pleasing others equals kindness. But the truth is, the kindest thing you can do is to live honestly. When you do, you quietly give others permission to do the same. And you'll be amazed at how light life feels when you stop filtering yourself. Conversations become easier, relationships become clearer, and decisions, they stop being about what will they think and start being about what feels right for me. That shift changes everything. It's not rebellion, it's revelation. It's the moment you realize you don't owe anyone the version of you that keeps them comfortable. Growth is uncomfortable. Truth is uncomfortable. But pretending? That's unbearable. Pretending corrodes the soul. One fake smile, one swallowed truth, one silent resentment at a time. So take the risk. Be misunderstood. Be quiet, be bold, be clumsy, be evolving. But above all, be you. Let them call it strange. Let them call it selfish. Let them walk away if they must. But you walk home to yourself. Because that's where peace lives. That's where power begins. The day you take off the mask isn't the day you lose acceptance. It's the day you finally meet yourself. And that is the beginning of real freedom. 3. That looping tape of the past. It's strange, isn't it? How the past, something long gone, untouchable, unchangeable, can sometimes feel more alive than the moment you're standing in right now. A conversation that ended years ago still echoes in your mind. A mistake you made once still burns like an open wound. A memory, a word, a single glance, all replaying in perfect detail as if the universe hit repeat and lost the remote. Some of these memories aren't even monumental when you look at them logically. But emotionally, they've anchored themselves deep within you because they were never truly released. They linger not because they're strong, but because they were never processed. They stay on that endless mental loop, whispering reminders of what went wrong, what hurt, what broke. You tell yourself that remembering is necessary, that it protects you from repeating the same mistakes. But there's a fine line between remembering and reliving. One teaches you, the other traps you, and far too often we confuse self-awareness with self-punishment. We think that replaying the pain somehow honors the lesson. when really it just reopens the wound. You don't have to keep revisiting the hardest chapters of your story just to prove you've learned from them. You don't have to keep your scars raw just to remind yourself that you survived. What happened, happened, and you survived. That alone is enough. You don't have to keep living inside that same story forever. There's a part of you, maybe quiet, maybe buried under layers of guilt or nostalgia, that doesn't want to forget, but desperately wants peace. That part of you knows the truth. You are not what happened to you. You are not your pain. You are not your trauma. You are the one who endured it, the one who kept walking through it, the one who, even while breaking, refused to stop breathing. That's who you are. Not the wounded character in the memory, but the author who's still writing. And yes, letting go of the past feels like betrayal sometimes. You might think that releasing the pain lets others off the hook, that forgiving means excusing. Or maybe you're scared that if you let it go, it might come back. But forgiveness, real forgiveness, isn't about them. It's about you. It's not about rewriting what happened. It's about finally putting the weight down, because the heavier the load, the slower your steps. And the more space your past occupies, the less room there is for the present to grow. Carl Jung once said, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." That's the essence of healing. Not erasing, but choosing. You can't go back and change the event. You can't edit the dialogue or reshoot the scene. But you can decide what you'll do with the pain now. Will it be your prison in or your compass? Will it hold you in place or guide you forward? The hardest part of the past isn't always what happened. It's how long we keep carrying it. We replay the moment, analyze every word, twist every possibility in our minds, and in doing that, we keep the wound open, raw, and bleeding. The mind, in its attempt to protect you, becomes your captor. It keeps touching the bruise, never allowing it to heal. Healing doesn't mean erasing the memory. It means letting the memory exist without owning you. It means waking up one morning and realizing your heart no longer feels heavy with yesterday. Here's something most people won't admit. Sometimes we hold on to pain because it's familiar. Because it gives us an identity. Because we've worn it for so long that we don't know who we are without it. You start to see yourself as the one who was betrayed, the one who failed, the one who was left. And even though it hurts, it's safe because it's known. So the idea of letting it go feels like losing a piece of yourself. But that version of you, the one who endured all of that, is tired. They've carried enough. They don't need to keep reliving it for you to remember your strength. They deserve peace. You don't owe your past another ounce of your energy. You've reflected. You've felt. You've learned. Now it's time to keep only what serves you. The lesson, not the burden. The wisdom, not the wound. The insight, not the ache. You are allowed to outgrow your story. You are allowed to heal without permission. You are allowed to become more than your most painful moment. And when your thoughts try to drag you back, to guilt, to anger, to sadness, pause, breathe, acknowledge it, and then gently remind yourself, that was then. This is now. It's not denial. It's discipline. It's choosing not to let something that already happened continue to harm you today. Because the mind, it's a relentless storyteller. It loves to replay the chapters it never understood, the ones that frightened it, the ones that didn't make sense. But you are not the story. You are the one listening. And the moment you stop identifying with every thought, you take your power back. You stop being the character and start becoming the author. You begin to choose thoughts that bring calm instead of chaos, that nurture instead of destroy, that build instead of blame. There's no timeline for healing, but there is a cost for postponing it. Every day spent living in the echo of what was is a day stolen from what could be. You deserve mornings that don't feel heavy. You deserve peace that isn't haunted by memories. You deserve to smile without guilt. You deserve to move on even if no one understands why. You can honor your past without being chained to it. You can respect the experiences that shaped you without letting them define you. You can be grateful for the strength you gained without clutching the pain that created it. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing freedom. It means whispering to yourself, I'm allowed to be okay now. That quiet declaration, that moment of inner permission, isn't weakness. It's courage. And in a world that feeds on noise, chaos, and repetition, that kind of peace is the most radical strength there is. 4. The storms you invent in your own mind. Isn't it strange? You're not a prophet, yet you live as if you can see the future, one catastrophe at a time. You write invisible scripts for disasters that haven't happened. You rehearse pain that might never arrive. You imagine arguments, endings, failures, living in a theater of fear that plays only inside your head. Every time your mind drifts into those imaginary futures, your body responds as if they're real. Your chest tightens. Your breath becomes shallow. Your peace slips away drop by drop as though leaking from an unseen crack. You think you're preparing yourself. You think you're being responsible. But what you're really doing is suffering early and often for things that may never happen at all. You live in a constant state of bracing for impact, like someone waiting for an explosion that never comes. It's exhausting. And over time, that exhaustion becomes identity. You start to believe that worry equals safety, that the more you imagine the worst, the more ready you'll be when it comes. But that's the illusion. Worry doesn't protect you. It imprisons you. It keeps you locked inside scenarios that exist only in thought. Seneca once said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." And he was right. Most of the tragedies your mind writes never leave the page. Most of the conversations you dread never happen. Most of the failures you fear dissolve before they ever touch you. And even when pain does arrive, it rarely resembles the one you rehearsed 1,000 times. Reality, when it finally appears, is rarely as cruel as your imagination painted it to be. Fear is clever. It disguises itself as logic. It whispers, "You're just being cautious. You're being smart." But that's not caution, it's self-torment. It's running endless mental simulations of heartbreak, embarrassment, and loss, and calling it preparation. You end up living in defense mode, planning for a life that never unfolds the way your anxiety predicts. You preempt heartbreak before love even begins. You anticipate judgment before you've spoken. You fear losing something before you've even learned how to hold it. That's not realism. That's resistance to life itself. Because life isn't something you can prescript. It's something you meet, moment by moment. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Today I escaped anxiety." Or no, I discarded it because it was within me, in my own perceptions, not outside. He understood what so many of us forget, that fear doesn't live in the world, it lives in the way we see the world. The mind can either be your sanctuary or your cage. And every time you believe every anxious thought that passes through, you're tightening the lock on that cage yourself. But what if you stopped believing every thought? What if, when fear knocks, you didn't open the door? What if instead of analyzing the what-ifs, you grounded yourself in what is? Because anxiety feeds on uncertainty, but peace grows from presence. Ask yourself, what's true right now? What's actually happening in this very breath? That's reality. Everything else is imagination wearing a mask of concern. The body doesn't know the difference between an imagined threat and a real one. It reacts to both as if danger were near. Your pulse races, your shoulders tense, your patience evaporates, all while nothing has happened except the noise in your mind. You end up at war with shadows. You lose sleep over ghosts. And yet, we all do it. We all know worry doesn't help, but we can't seem to stop. It feels automatic, mechanical, habitual. That's where Stoic awareness steps in. Not judgment, not shame, just awareness. You catch the thought. You notice the spiral starting. And instead of diving in, you pause. You breathe. You come back to the ground beneath you. That moment, that pause, is power. It's the first act of reclaiming your peace. It's how you reteach your nervous system what safety really feels like. Because true safety doesn't come from control. It comes from trust. Trust in your own resilience. Trust in your ability to face whatever comes when it comes. You've faced uncertainty before. You've endured what you thought you couldn't. You've stumbled, adapted, healed, survived. That's proof. Your past is full of evidence that you're more capable than your fear allows you to believe. The truth is, you're not fragile. You're simply tired. Tired of rehearsing pain that hasn't arrived. Tired of playing chess against an opponent that doesn't exist. Tired of trying to outthink fate. But you don't have to. You were never meant to. You don't need to see 10 steps ahead. You only need to meet the next step fully present, and then the next, and then the next. Because life doesn't require prediction, it requires participation. So drop your shoulders, take a long breath. You don't need to solve tomorrow today. You don't need to prepare for disasters that live only in thought. Right now, in this breath, you are safe. You are capable. You are enough, and when fear returns, and it will, you'll recognize it for what it truly is. Not prophecy, not truth, just noise, a passing echo of the mind. Let it move through you like wind through leaves. Don't chase it. Don't wrestle it. Just notice and let go. Because the more you practice being here in this moment, the quieter that noise becomes. And in that quiet, something incredible awakens. Trust. Not in the world, not in luck, but in yourself. And once that trust takes root, no imagined catastrophe can shake it again. 5. Emotional begging. There's a silence that follows emotional begging, a silence that doesn't soothe, but stings. It's not the kind of quiet you choose. It's the kind that's left behind after you've poured every drop of yourself into trying to be enough for someone who was never willing to meet you halfway. You tried harder, reached further, softened your voice, widened your heart, and loved louder than before. Yet somehow it was never enough. Every time they pulled away, you thought, maybe if I give just a little more, they'll stay. Maybe if I become easier to love, they'll finally see me. But the truth is, real love doesn't demand pursuit. Genuine connection doesn't need to be chased. Love that has to be begged for isn't love, it's performance. It's approval dressed up in affection. And approval, no matter how sweet it seems in the moment, is never worth your peace. Somewhere along the way, we were taught that love must be earned. That to be chosen, we have to constantly prove our value, to smile through the pain, to bend without breaking, to accept less and call it devotion. We learned that being good enough means pleasing others, even if it costs our emotional stability. So we start begging, quietly, subtly, almost invisibly. We beg not with words, but with small sacrifices, with silence when we should speak, with forgiveness when they haven't even apologized. We beg by lowering our standards, by making ourselves smaller so others feel bigger, by pretending the cracks in our heart are character flaws instead of signs of exhaustion. We beg when we hide our needs out of fear they'll leave if they see them. We beg when we stay where we're barely seen, hoping they'll finally notice how much we care. But that's not love. That's survival. That's a slow starvation of the soul. Because love isn't a reward. It's not a contract. It's not something you earn through endurance. Love, in its truest form, is mutual recognition. It meets you where you are. It doesn't make you audition for affection. If someone makes you feel like you must work for their presence, you're not being loved, you're being tested. And you weren't born to live in a constant exam of your worth. You were meant to be met, with ease, with respect, with openness. There's a kind of love that doesn't require begging. It listens without you having to raise your voice. It notices the change in your energy before you even speak. It holds you steady instead of keeping you guessing. That love doesn't weaponize silence or use distance as punishment. It doesn't make you earn its softness by enduring its storms. But here's the truth. To experience that kind of love, you first have to believe you deserve it. You have to stop mistaking crumbs for nourishment. Stop calling inconsistency passion. Stop labeling emotional chaos as chemistry. It's painful to walk away when your heart still lingers, I know. But it's far more painful to stay somewhere that keeps convincing you you're too much or never enough. There's a quiet erosion that happens when you keep chasing what refuses to meet you. Your confidence fades, your reflection grows dim, and slowly you begin to confuse instability with excitement, manipulation with meaning, pain with proof of love. That's how deep the conditioning runs, when your worth has been tied to someone else's attention for too long. Carl Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely, because when you finally accept yourself fully, you stop needing others to do it for you. You stop begging. You stop performing for affection. You stop fighting to be chosen by people who only value what you can offer them. And yes, it's terrifying at first. It means letting go of relationships that once felt like home, even when they've become houses built on sand. It means standing in front of the mirror and realizing that peace might feel like loneliness for a while. It means learning to live without the validation you once thought was oxygen. But on the other side of that fear is something sacred: freedom. A peace so steady it doesn't need to be proven. A love for yourself that no rejection can touch. You begin to move differently. You stop explaining your worth. You stop proving your loyalty through pain. You stop overextending just to be seen. You simply are. And the people who are meant for you will meet you there, without needing the performance, without needing the chase. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stop talking, stop fixing, stop chasing. Let silence speak the words your soul is tired of repeating. Let your absence express what your presence once tolerated. Not out of spite, but out of self-respect. Because you were never meant to feel like love is survival. You were never meant to confuse anxiety with intimacy. You were never meant to earn your place in someone's heart through suffering. You are not half of something waiting to be completed. You are whole. You've always been whole. The people who cannot meet you in that wholeness are not your enemies. They're simply unequipped. Their inability to love you deeply doesn't mean you are unworthy of depth. It only means they have not yet found theirs. Your task isn't to teach them how to love you. Your task is to love yourself enough to walk away when they can't. That doesn't mean you close your heart. It means you protect it. You don't grow colder, you grow clearer. You begin to see the difference between someone who wants to connect and someone who only wants to consume. You learn to choose solitude over being half seen. You learn that silence can be healing, not hollow. And in that stillness, you begin to rebuild. Healing doesn't come from chasing closure. It comes from choosing yourself, from realizing that your worth was never conditional, that your softness was never foolish, that your loyalty wasn't weakness, it was love just misplaced. Now you place it where it belongs, within yourself, in your heart, in your peace. Because peace is not something you earn, it's something you allow. You no longer have to scream your worth. You no longer have to prove your love through pain. You no longer have to beg for what should have been freely given. You simply decide that you are done explaining why you deserve to be treated well. Done waiting for someone to see what has always been clear. Done mistaking pain for proof of love. When love is real, it doesn't test you. It meets you. It doesn't drain you, it grounds you. So let the silence fall. Let peace take its place. This isn't giving up. This is rising back into your own worth. The end of emotional begging is the beginning of remembering who you were before you learned to beg. 6. The silent grudges that quietly corrode your soul. There's a certain illusion of control in holding on to resentment. You convince yourself that if you just stay angry enough, guarded enough, detached enough, no one will ever have the power to hurt you again. That the walls built from bitterness are a kind of armor, keeping you safe, strong, untouched. But that's the lie resentment tells. Because anger doesn't protect you. It imprisons you. Every moment you replay what happened, every time you relive the injustice, you're tightening the bars of a cage that exists entirely within your own mind. Grudges don't shield you. They slowly suffocate your peace, drop by drop, until you can't remember what it felt like to breathe easily, to trust, to love without caution. The worst part? It doesn't always show up as rage or confrontation. Sometimes the most dangerous grudges are quiet. They live in the unsaid, in the betrayal you never named, in the apology you never received but still secretly wait for, in the conversation you keep rehearsing in your mind even years later. You tell yourself it's fine, that you've moved on. But if the thought of that person, that moment, that memory still twists something inside you, it isn't gone. It's just buried, waiting for silence to unearth it. We misunderstand forgiveness because we think it's about them, the ones who hurt us. We think it means excusing their behavior, pretending the pain never happened. But real forgiveness has nothing to do with them. It's a quiet act of self-liberation. It's deciding that you won't keep carrying the ashes of what burned you. It's saying, you don't get to live rent-free in my heart anymore. Resentment, no matter how justified, becomes an anchor tied to the moment of pain. You replay the scene. You analyze every word. You try to make sense of what was senseless. And in doing so, you relive it again and again. Meanwhile, the person who caused it, They might be living their life completely unaware, untouched by the storm still raging inside you. That's how grudges trap us. We drink the poison, hoping someone else will feel the effect. They disguise themselves as strength, but in truth, they are unhealed wounds that never saw the light. And wounds kept in the dark don't close, they fester. Healing, on the other hand, requires air. It requires honesty. It requires release. When you build your identity around pain, anger becomes a language you speak fluently. You react from it, think from it, love through it. Every new relationship, every opportunity for connection gets filtered through that residue. You stop trusting easily. You brace for disappointment before it even arrives. You keep your heart half closed, convincing yourself it's wisdom, when in reality, it's fear wearing armor. But there's no peace in permanent defense. Self-preservation is necessary at first, but living your whole life from that place will drain you, because being guarded isn't the same as being grounded. The Stoics often spoke about the futility of anger. Seneca wrote, "Anger, if not restrained, is often more hurtful to us than the injury that provoked it." And that's exactly what grudges do. They turn a single wound into a lifelong affliction. The real power isn't in staying angry. It's in the stillness of choosing peace. You don't forgive because they deserve it. You forgive because you're tired of bleeding for something that already happened. You forgive because you're ready to stop carrying their shadow into every sunrise. That choice doesn't make you weak. It makes you free. It takes immense strength to unclench your fists, to say, "This hurt me, but it won't define me." You don't have to announce it. You don't have to call them or write it out or prove your healing to anyone. True forgiveness is often invisible. It happens in the quiet moments when the memory resurfaces and no longer burns the same. When their name doesn't send a ripple through your chest, when you can think of what happened and your nervous system stays still. That's when you know you've released it. That's when bitterness leaves the body. When tension melts from your jaw. When your breath deepens again. What's left is clarity. The kind of peace that isn't loud or showy, but quietly transformative. Forgiveness doesn't erase the lesson. It just stops letting the lesson become your identity. You still keep your boundaries. You still remember what you learned, but you stop letting the memory run your life. You stop confusing healing with forgetting. You're allowed to heal even if they never said sorry, even if they never admitted the damage they caused. Your peace doesn't require their participation, because closure isn't something they give you. It's something you decide. Letting go doesn't mean pretending it never happened. It means no longer allowing it to define how you show up in the world. You can forgive from a distance. You can wish them well and never look back. You can protect your space without carrying the weight of resentment everywhere you go. And yes, letting go is not a single moment. It's a practice. Some days it feels effortless. Other days you'll have to choose it again and again. But each time you choose peace over anger, presence over the past, you reclaim another piece of your power, because you deserve to move lightly. You deserve to enter new chapters unburdened. You deserve to breathe without remembering what broke you. So ask yourself, what would my life look like without this heaviness? What would it feel like to finally stop carrying what was never mine to hold? And then ask the harder question, do they deserve that space in my heart? Or do I? Not everything needs closure. Sometimes you are the closure. Sometimes walking away quietly, without explanation, is the most powerful act of all. You're not giving them permission. You're giving yourself peace, and peace, true, untouchable, self-earned peace, is worth far more than any grudge you could ever hold. 7. The fake finish line called happiness. We've been sold a story so many times that it started sounding like truth. The story that happiness lives somewhere beyond today. In the next achievement. The next chapter. The next version of yourself that finally has it all together. We're told that once we land the dream job, make 6 figures, move to the right city, or meet the person who completes us, we'll finally arrive. We'll finally be happy. So we chase, we grind. We measure our days by progress and our worth by milestones. We scroll through other people's highlight reels and build imaginary finish lines in our heads, believing that once we cross them, everything will finally make sense. But no one warns you what happens next. The finish line moves. Every time you get close, it shifts a little further. The promotion comes, but the satisfaction fades. The relationship works, but the restlessness stays. The new version of you still feels incomplete, just wearing better clothes. And no matter how far or fast you run, it never feels like enough. It starts early, doesn't it? You chase good grades, then graduation, then a stable job, then recognition, then love, then success, then reinvention. The line keeps stretching, always a little further out of reach. And you wake up one day realizing that your life looks fine on paper. But inside, you're still waiting for permission to feel okay. Still whispering to yourself, maybe after this, I'll finally be happy. But happiness was never supposed to be a destination. It was meant to be a direction, a way of walking through life, not a trophy waiting at the end of it. You can collect every symbol of success, the money, the love, the status, and still feel hollow if your inner voice is unkind. If your peace depends on outcomes, if your nervous system is always on alert, because no amount of external achievement can fix an internal imbalance. The truth is, we've been trained not to live, but to chase, to compete, to compare, to treat our own existence like a never-ending to-do list. And the systems around us, the ads, the algorithms, the culture of more, they feed that hunger. They keep whispering that contentment equals complacency, that peace means you've stopped trying, that you're only valuable when you're improving. But as Carl Jung said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, not to impress, not to accumulate, to become. And becoming doesn't happen out there. It happens right here, in the quiet presence of your ordinary days. Real happiness isn't loud. It doesn't shout its arrival. It doesn't post itself online. It shows up quietly, in small, sacred details. The morning light spilling through the curtain. The deep breath after finishing something hard. The laughter that comes from a place of ease, not effort. The peace in realizing that right now, nothing is missing. But if your mind is always running ahead, chasing the next validation, you'll miss it. You'll scroll past your own life waiting for a better one to begin. Perfection seduces us because it feels like purpose. It gives direction, but it's a mirage. Perfection doesn't exist, and chasing it will only make you numb, because what you truly want isn't perfection. It's peace, and peace doesn't come from fixing everything. It comes from not needing to. It comes from showing up as you are, tired, uncertain, imperfect, and still choosing to be kind to yourself. It comes from realizing that rest isn't earned, it's allowed. That joy isn't a prize, it's a presence. That you don't have to deserve happiness to feel it. You only have to stop postponing it. You've been conditioned to wait until you lose the weight, until your home looks better, until your mind is healed, until the timing feels perfect. But life isn't waiting for you. It's moving constantly, with or without your permission. If you keep waiting for the perfect day to be happy, you'll spend your whole life waiting. Because there is no perfect day. There's only this one. And what you do with it, how you speak to yourself, how you treat others, how you respond to what's already here. That's where happiness hides. It's not in the applause. It's in the quiet pride of following through. It's not in the grand adventure. It's in the morning routine you've built with care. It's not in the big, cinematic moments. It's in the rhythm of small, repeated acts of presence. The way you pause before reacting. The way you take one deep breath before answering. The way you make your coffee, not in a rush, but as a ritual. These aren't small things. They are everything, and they add up, quietly, invisibly, until one day you realize you're not chasing anymore. You're living. There's nothing wrong with ambition. Growth matters. Dreams matter. But if the pursuit destroys your peace, what kind of life are you building? If you reach every goal but lose your ability to feel joy along the way, what have you really gained? If you don't know how to feel content without the title, the partner, the attention, will you even know how to enjoy it when it finally comes? That's the question most people never ask, because we assume happiness will teach us how to live. But it's the opposite. How you live determines how happy you can be. Your habits matter more than your highlights. Your inner dialogue matters more than your resume. The way you treat people when no one's watching, that's your true measure of wealth. And the biggest shift comes when you stop asking, when will I be happy? And start asking, how can I find joy today with what I already have? That's the Stoic way to bring meaning into the present moment instead of chasing it into the future. To find beauty not in the next chapter, but in this sentence, because the power was never in the finish line. It was always in how you choose to run, so slow down, breathe. Let the version of you that's been sprinting take a seat. Let the one that believes happiness is waiting somewhere ahead finally rest. You are already allowed to be happy, not because everything's perfect, but because you're alive, because you're learning, because this moment, right now, is enough. There is no finish line, just a series of moments. And in each one, you get to decide, how will I show up? Not for the crowd, not for the algorithm, not for the world, but for you. So let happiness be something you build, not something you chase. Let it be messy. Let it be real. Let it be now. 8. Habits that quietly destroy your energy. Most people believe energy disappears in big, dramatic explosions, burnout, breakdowns, emotional collapse. But the truth? Energy doesn't vanish in storms. It seeps out through cracks, through small, silent habits that seem harmless, yet slowly drain the essence of your focus and vitality. You rarely notice them at first. It's the midnight scrolling that eats away at your sleep, the skipped breakfast that dulls your clarity, the automatic yes to things your soul is whispering no to. These tiny moments don't announce themselves as dangerous, but repeated daily, they become the invisible termites of your strength, eating away at your peace from the inside out. You shrug them off. You tell yourself everyone's tired, everyone's busy. It becomes the mantra of a restless world. You start believing fatigue is just part of being human. But over time, it's not just your body that grows heavy, it's your spirit. You wake up already behind. Your thoughts feel tangled. Your confidence starts to flicker. You begin the day running, yet feel like you're standing still, and the world doesn't pause for your exhaustion. The deadlines remain. The messages keep coming. The responsibilities pile higher. So you keep going, running on fumes, pretending everything's fine, hoping no one sees how close you are to shutting down completely. Most people think they need a full-blown life transformation to fix it. New habits, new schedules, new everything. But true change doesn't begin with a revolution. It begins with awareness, with one clear decision: to stop leaking your energy into things that don't serve you. Because energy isn't just what you eat or how long you sleep. It's what you tolerate, what you consume, what you allow to take up space in your mind, your conversations, your environment. Every distraction, every obligation, every harmless habit that doesn't align with your peace quietly taxes your life force. You say yes out of guilt, and suddenly your week belongs to everyone but you. You open your phone for 5 minutes, and 40 minutes later, you're comparing your behind the scenes to someone else's highlight reel. You skip water because you're too busy, forgetting that dehydration clouds the very mind you rely on. You skip movement, mistaking stillness for rest, forgetting that motion is medicine, the way your body shakes off stagnation. These aren't small things. They are signals. Silent red flags from your system saying something needs to change. Ignoring them doesn't make you disciplined. It makes you disconnected. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And that's exactly what these habits do. They live beneath awareness, guiding your mood, your drive, your confidence, until exhaustion starts to feel like identity. But it's not who you are. It's simply what you've been repeating. The shift begins when you stop romanticizing fatigue and start recognizing it as feedback, a sign that something is off. You don't need to change everything overnight. That's the illusion that keeps you stuck. Because real transformation doesn't start with motivation. It starts with motion. With one honest step, drink water before you check your phone. Move your body for 5 minutes, not to burn calories, but to awaken life. Say no to something that's been draining you, even if it disappoints someone. Put your phone down 30 minutes before bed, not because it's a trend, but because your peace deserves darkness and silence. These aren't just self-care rituals. They are declarations of self-respect. Proof that you're no longer betraying yourself for convenience or approval. At first, it will feel small, maybe even useless. One stretch won't fix your fatigue. One early night won't heal your chaos. But it's not about immediate change. It's about sending a message to yourself. I am no longer asleep at the wheel, and each time you honor those small promises, trust builds. Self-trust becomes self-respect. Self-respect becomes discipline. And discipline is what awakens energy. Not caffeine, not inspiration, but consistency. You might think your motivation is gone, but maybe you're just tired from carrying too many things that aren't yours. Maybe your body isn't lazy. Maybe it's just done asking nicely. Maybe your foggy mind isn't broken. Maybe it's overstimulated and undernourished from years of digital noise and emotional clutter. The peace you're chasing isn't distant. It's hidden beneath what you've normalized. And the path back to yourself begins with subtraction. Cut one thing today that drains you. Just one. A toxic chat, a pointless scroll, that unnecessary commitment you said yes to out of habit. Remove it without guilt, without drama, just quiet conviction. And then fill that space with something that nourishes you. A slow walk, a deep breath, a boundary, a pause. That's your reset. That's your real power. Energy isn't something you find. It's something you protect. And the moment you start seeing your habits not as routines, but as rituals of self-respect, everything changes. You stop wondering why you're tired and start realizing what's stealing your strength. That realization is the first step toward freedom. Because noticing is awareness, and awareness is power. So if you feel drained, scattered, uncentered, stop waiting for the perfect plan or a surge of motivation. Begin now, quietly, intentionally. Reclaim your energy not for the sake of productivity, but for presence. Because a clear, calm, fully awake version of you, that's the most powerful force you can bring into this world. And it all begins with what you choose to let go of and what you choose to protect. 9. Explaining yourself to everyone. There comes a point in life where you simply get tired of explaining yourself. Not because you're hiding something, not because you owe anyone an apology, but because you finally realize that your truth doesn't require an audience to make it valid. There's a calm that arrives when you stop needing people to understand the choices you've made. You begin to understand that not every decision needs a backstory, not every shift needs a speech, and not every question deserves an answer. You are not a courtroom. You are not on trial for the way you choose to live. The path you walk, the pace you move at, the things you protect, they do not require public defense. The pressure to explain often grows from one of our deepest human needs, the need to be understood. We crave connection, clarity, closure. But the moment you start explaining too much, something subtle begins to happen. You start performing. You begin to frame your truth in ways that make it easier for others to digest, softening the edges, minimizing the depth, reshaping your reasons so they sound acceptable. And before long, you're no longer being authentic. You're being strategic about your own story. But who are you doing that for? Them? Or the part of you that still fears disapproval? Every time you over-explain, you hand away a fragment of your power. You send the message, quietly, unconsciously, that your choices are negotiable, that your boundaries are optional, that your life is up for debate. But it isn't. Your path is not a group project. It doesn't need consensus or validation. It is your personal evolution, built on experiences no one else has lived, shaped by pain no one else has endured, and guided by values no one else is responsible for honoring. Silence is often misunderstood, labeled as arrogance, avoidance, or detachment. But in truth, silence can be sacred. It's not emptiness, it's self-containment. It's the quiet assurance of someone who no longer needs to justify their becoming. When you truly know who you are, you stop explaining. Not because you don't care, but because you're at peace. You embody your truth instead of advertising it. You let your presence speak instead of your defense. And ironically, that's when people finally start paying attention. There's a magnetic strength in those who move with quiet certainty, who no longer overshare their every reason just to be understood. You don't need to explain why you distanced yourself. You don't need to justify why your priorities changed, why your standards rose, why your boundaries tightened. Growth doesn't need a press release. You're allowed to change your mind without offering a PowerPoint presentation about it. You're allowed to outgrow people and environments that no longer fit your peace. The most transformative seasons of your life will often unfold in silence. No announcements, no explanations, just quiet action. That's the real freedom. When you stop making choices for approval and start making them for alignment. When peace matters more than performance. When truth matters more than being liked. In that shift, life starts to feel lighter. You stop rehearsing conversations in your head. You stop trying to convert doubters into believers. You stop begging to be understood by people who have already decided not to see you clearly. Not everyone is meant to understand your path, because not everyone was built to walk it with you. Your life isn't a PR campaign. You don't need to brand your authenticity or market your growth. As Marcus Aurelius once said, waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. That wisdom still stands. Stop arguing your goodness. Stop debating your worth. Live it. Embody it. Let your actions do the speaking. People will always interpret you through the lens of their own fears, insecurities, and limitations. They'll twist your silence into stories, your boundaries into arrogance, your growth into distance. Let them. Their version of you exists only in their mind, and you owe that version nothing. Let your peace be your answer. Let your consistency speak louder than your explanations. Let your boundaries, your kindness, your steadiness, your evolution tell the story words never could. You are not cold for keeping your private life private. You are not rude for refusing to participate in conversations that go nowhere. You are not selfish for protecting your energy. That's not distance. That's wisdom. That's maturity. That's self-respect dressed as silence. Clarity doesn't always mean elaboration. You can simply say, "This is what I've chosen," and stop there. You can say, "I'm not discussing that," and let the pause speak for itself. You can say nothing at all and still be entirely understood by those who matter. Silence isn't weakness. Sometimes, silence is strength wearing the face of restraint. And here's what's beautiful. The people who genuinely love and respect you won't need an explanation. They'll trust your heart even when they don't understand your choices. They'll honor your space even when they wish you were closer. That's how you recognize your people, not by agreement, but by respect. You don't need to spend your energy convincing the world you're good. You don't need to dilute your truth to make it easier to swallow. You don't need to make your healing digestible for those who never tasted your pain. If someone demands a detailed justification just to accept your growth, they're not seeking understanding. They're seeking control. And you've grown past that. You've traveled too far, healed too deeply, learned too much to keep handing out explanations like permission slips. This is your path, your rhythm, your transformation. It doesn't need commentary. You are not rude for choosing silence. You are not distant for choosing peace. You are not difficult for choosing self-respect. You are simply living aligned, choosing to be who you are without constantly translating yourself for the comfort of others. So stop explaining and start embodying. Stop narrating your growth and start walking in it. Let your stillness be your strength. Let your actions be your language. Let your peace, calm, quiet, unwavering, be the only explanation you'll ever need. 10. Constant criticism, especially of yourself. There's a voice inside your head. You've been listening to it for so long, you don't even question it anymore. It whispers that you're not doing enough, that you're behind, that you should be further along by now. It compares you to everyone else, as if their highlight reels are proof of your inadequacy. And when you stumble, when you fall short, when you get tired, suddenly that voice roars and you believe it. Somehow, you assume that just because it lives in your mind, it must be right. But here's the truth. That voice isn't truth. It isn't a map or a guide. It's habit. A worn path in your brain you've walked so many times that it feels automatic. And it keeps you stuck. You are not lazy. You are not broken. You are overwhelmed, pulled in 1,000 directions, overstimulated, trying to carry more than anyone sees. You wake up with a weight pressing on your chest, and yet you get out of bed. You still show up. You still keep going, even when your inner dialogue is tearing you apart. That is not weakness. That is strength. But your mind has become so accustomed to cruelty that it doesn't know how to speak any other language. You've mistaken pressure for motivation, harshness for discipline, self-punishment for growth. Think about it. You don't shame a flower into blooming. You don't yell at a wound to heal faster. You cannot berate your current self into becoming your best self. Progress doesn't come from force. It comes from understanding, from curiosity, from asking better questions. Not, what's wrong with me? But, what do I actually need? Not, why can't I just do this? But, what's blocking me? When you swap judgment for curiosity, the world softens. The path clears. You stop reacting and start responding. You stop fighting yourself and start working with yourself. And that shift is transformative. Because when you change the way you speak to yourself, you change the way you treat yourself. You create space for rest without guilt, space for mistakes without shame, space for growth without pressure to perform perfectly. Growth is not linear. It's messy. It's full of days where you feel unstoppable and days where you feel unraveling. Both are allowed. Neither defines your worth. Carl Jung said, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." And that includes the stories you tell yourself every day, the inner voice you replay like a broken record. If that voice is anchored in self-blame, self-doubt, self-attack, then no achievement will ever feel enough. You'll hit milestones and hear that whisper, "Yeah, but you could have done better." So maybe the solution isn't doing more. Maybe it's pausing long enough to ask, where did I learn to speak to myself this way? And do I still need to? Because on the other side of that harshness, there's a version of you still full of dreams, still craving joy, still believing in peace. But they need you to be on their side first. Not just on good days, but on the messy ones. The ones where nothing works, where exhaustion feels endless, where the weight of life feels unbearable. Those are the days you need the kindest voice, the gentlest presence, the strongest ally. Being compassionate with yourself is not weakness. It's not giving up. It's creating the conditions for sustainable change. Discipline built on shame will always crack. Discipline built on care, on understanding, on truth, on kindness, that's unshakable. That's what lasts. You show up for yourself not because you fear falling behind, but because you recognize your worth. That is quiet power, a strength most people never understand, but you can embody it. Start small. Catch that inner critic in the act. When it says, "You're so behind," respond with, "I'm doing the best I can with what I have." When it says, "You always mess this up," say, "This is a pattern I can shift. This is a lesson, not a sentence." And remind yourself, you've come a long way. You're still here. You're still trying. That deserves acknowledgement. The world will always judge. It will always demand. It will always compare. Don't become the critic in your own life. Be your anchor. Be your reset. Be your reminder that you don't need to earn rest. You don't need to justify struggle. You don't need to prove your worth. Struggle is human. Rest is human. You are human. Humanity is not a performance. There will always be someone doing more, achieving faster, looking sharper, living cleaner, but their path is theirs. Yours is yours. Rich with unseen battles, rich with resilience you forget to honor. Stop thinking your inner chaos disqualifies you from growth. It doesn't. It makes your growth real. As you move forward, through habits, through healing, through goals, remember this. The voice in your head matters more than you realize. Let it be a builder, not a breaker. Let it guide, not punish. Let it be a coach, not a critic. And when in doubt, pause. Ask, what would help me right now? Not what would impress others, not what would earn applause, but what would genuinely help me. Ask that consistently. Let that guide you. That will take you farther than any harsh inner monologue ever could. Because compassion isn't weakness, it's fuel. Fuel for everything you're becoming. 11. Comparing yourself to everyone online. It's easy to lose track of yourself when you're constantly scrolling through carefully curated slices of other people's lives. You open your phone, and in seconds you're flooded with images of perfect bodies, perfect homes, perfect relationships, perfect careers. Everyone seems to be moving faster, looking sharper, achieving more. At first, it's subtle, that tightening in your chest you barely notice. You weren't unhappy before, but now you're questioning everything. Your pace, your progress, your worth. Not because anything has changed, but because your mind has been hijacked by comparison. We live in a world where scrolling through hundreds of lives before breakfast is normal. Success is measured in likes. Happiness is measured in posts. Perfection is measured in filters. And even when deep down you know it's staged, you feel it. Your brain doesn't say, "This is curated, it's not real." It says, "Why am I not there yet?" And just like that, your peace evaporates. You were proud of your progress until someone else's highlight reel appeared. You were content with your life until another person's joy looked shinier. But here's the truth that cuts through all the noise. You are not behind. You are not late. You are not in the wrong place. You are walking a path that is entirely yours, one that no one else can validate, measure, or compare. The moment you start seeing yourself through someone else's timeline, you lose the thread of your own story. And your story is worth staying connected to because it's real, it's messy, it's honest, and it's yours. When you finally stop comparing and start accepting, something shifts inside. You begin to own your pace. You start trusting that just because something hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it never will. Timing is personal, not universal. Real transformation doesn't always look viral. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's slow. But it is always meaningful. Comparison steals more than joy. It steals identity. It makes you second-guess your instincts, doubt your choices, and subtly shift your goals toward what looks impressive instead of what feels aligned. But impressing people who don't know the full story will never satisfy you. Even if you reach that milestone, it won't feel like yours. It will feel borrowed, as if you're wearing someone else's definition of success like a costume. The deepest, most profound growth happens in private, away from cameras, away from applause. It happens in quiet moments when no one is watching, when you're just doing the work, healing, learning, building, resting. That's where real change takes root. Not in likes, not in comments, not in public validation, but in the invisible layers of growth that no algorithm can capture. And if you anchor yourself in that truth, nothing anyone posts can shake you. Start protecting your mind. Mute what makes you feel small. Step back from the content that constantly triggers doubt or envy. You don't need to explain it. You don't need to apologize for guarding your mental space. This isn't jealousy. It's self-awareness. It's a conscious decision to let your own voice, your own rhythm, be louder than the noise surrounding you. That is survival in a world that profits off of insecurity. Your worth is not tied to visibility. Your value does not increase when more people see you. Some of the most vital parts of yourself only grow when no one is watching, when you are offline, when you are not performing, when you are simply being. The aspects of you that matter most often flourish in stillness, away from comparison, away from the curated perfection of others. Remember, you have no idea what sacrifices someone else made to achieve what they show online. You don't know their struggles, their doubts, their sleepless nights, the moments they felt like giving up. Social media only shows the highlight reel, not the behind the scenes. Comparing your full life to someone else's edited snapshot will always make you feel smaller, but you are not smaller. You are just seeing the tip of their iceberg and measuring it against the depth of your own ocean. Scroll to learn, scroll to laugh, scroll to connect, but don't scroll to measure your worth, because nothing online will ever tell you what your heart already knows. You are on your own timeline, moving at your own pace, with your own rhythm and your own kind of magic. What if you trusted your process? What if you allowed your slow days to be sacred, your small steps to be meaningful? What if you believed that your story, with all its pauses, detours, and plot twists, is unfolding exactly as it should? There is no universal blueprint for becoming. The pressure to keep up exists only if you keep looking sideways. The moment you turn your gaze inward, the race disappears. All that remains is your path. And your path is worth staying on, even when it's quiet, even when no one applauds, even when someone else's journey looks louder, because your journey is real. It is raw, and it is leading somewhere beautiful. Keep going, not to catch up, not to impress, not to replicate someone else, but because you finally understand you were never behind to begin with. 12. The need to always be right. There's a subtle pressure that creeps in when you feel the need to always be right. It starts almost imperceptibly, a slight tension in your chest when someone questions your opinion, a reflex to explain yourself even when no one asked. That quiet, nagging thought that if you let something go unchallenged, somehow you've lost. But here's the truth. Being right rarely brings the victory it promises, because what it often costs is far more valuable than proving a point. It costs your calm. It costs your focus. It costs your presence. Sometimes it even costs your relationships. In the heat of the moment, defending your position feels justified. Logic is on your side. Facts back you up. Experience validates you. And it feels like if you don't speak, the other person wins. But life isn't a courtroom, and conversations aren't a debate stage. Most of the time, there's no prize for being right. Only tension, mental exhaustion, and a racing heart. You replay what you said, what they said, what you should have said, and for what? To protect a version of yourself that refuses to be wrong. That's not protection. That's ego masquerading as certainty. The need to be right doesn't always come from arrogance. Often it comes from fear. Fear of being unheard. Fear of being misunderstood. Fear that being wrong means being less intelligent, less competent, less valuable. But being wrong doesn't make you less. It makes you human. Everyone misreads situations, reacts emotionally, misses the mark, changes their mind. What matters isn't being right. What matters is being grounded enough in your own worth that disagreement doesn't feel like a threat. Carl Jung said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." That's especially true in arguments. If every disagreement feels personal, if every challenge triggers tension, it may be less about the other person and more about your inner world. The need to be right often hides deeper insecurities. Maybe you weren't listened to as a child. Maybe you grew up always fixing things. Maybe you learned that being wrong meant being weak. But you are not that child anymore. You are not living in that chapter. You can be wrong now and still be safe. There's a quiet strength in admitting you might be right, or even in saying, "I don't know." There's power in stepping back from the tug of war and choosing peace over pride. This doesn't mean you have no opinion. It means you've moved past fighting every battle. Not every hill is worth dying on. Some arguments are simply noise, distractions, pulling you away from what truly matters. And in those moments, the strongest move isn't to win, it's to let go. Imagine what your days would feel like if you didn't take the bait every time someone misunderstood you. If you didn't feel compelled to explain every nuance, defend every word, justify every choice. If you could simply hear someone's perspective without needing to correct it, you'd gain clarity, focus, energy, space to fill your life with what matters rather than drain it. Letting go of the need to be right is like dropping a weight you didn't realize you were carrying. It isn't always easy, especially when you know you're right, but that's when it matters most. Choosing grace over ego becomes a practice, a conscious, repeated decision to prioritize your peace over temporary victories. You don't have to prove anything. You don't have to convince anyone. Your value isn't increased by winning an argument, and it isn't diminished by walking away from one. There's a difference between standing for truth and chasing validation. The first is rooted in confidence. The second is rooted in insecurity. When you know yourself, you don't argue to be seen. You speak to be clear. And if clarity isn't received, you move on. You don't cling. You don't spiral. You don't waste hours trying to fix what refuses to be understood. You protect your energy. You safeguard your focus. And in doing so, you build something stronger than the illusion of control. You build inner peace. You realize that your perspective doesn't need an audience. Your opinion doesn't lose value when someone disagrees. The goal isn't to be right, it's to be free. Free from overthinking, from over-explaining, from the emotional tug-of-war that keeps you tethered to approval. This isn't passivity. It's wisdom. It's knowing when to engage and when to let go. It's choosing peace over pride. It's saying less, meaning more. Because the loudest voice in the room isn't always the right one. It's often just the one that hasn't learned to listen yet. You can hold your values, express your thoughts, and stand for yourself. But you don't need clenched fists or a tight jaw to do it. You can do it with calm, clarity, and quiet confidence and still be heard. When someone tries to pull you into a power struggle, you simply don't go. You protect what truly matters: your energy, your balance, your time. Those are worth far more than any temporary win. Let them believe what they want. Let them think they're right. Let the conversation end without the last word. You don't lose anything by walking away with your peace intact. If anything, you gain something far greater: freedom. And with that freedom comes space. The space to grow, to listen, to reflect, to choose your battles wisely, and to hold your silence intentionally. When you stop needing to be right, you start being real. And being real, grounded, present, self-aware, that's where true power lives. 13. Overcommitment and people-pleasing. There's a version of you that learned to say yes before even thinking. Not because you always wanted to, but because somewhere along the way, you started believing that your value was measured by how needed you were. That if you could keep everyone happy, no one would leave. That if you stayed endlessly available, agreeable, accommodating, you could avoid conflict, disappointment, rejection, so you kept saying yes. One more favor, one more task, one more obligation. Even when your body screamed for rest, even when your mind was drowning in noise, even when your soul quietly whispered, enough. And the most dangerous part? People got used to it. They stopped checking if you had the time, the energy, the bandwidth. They assumed you'd always be there because you always had been. But you're not a machine. You're not built to endlessly give, to stretch, to absorb without pause, without receiving. You're human. You need stillness. You need boundaries. You need the sound of your own thoughts after weeks, months of meeting everyone else's expectations while silencing your own. The problem is, when your default is yes, saying no feels like betrayal. It feels like failing, but it isn't failure. It's freedom. It's the first sign that you're beginning to respect yourself in the same way you've always respected others. Burnout isn't a badge of honor, it's a warning light. Your system is blinking red, signaling that this pace isn't sustainable, that your energy is not infinite, that your body and mind are asking for care. Yet most people push through anyway. Overcommitment has been romanticized. Exhaustion is worn like a trophy, proof that we're hardworking, selfless, loyal. But none of those qualities matter if they cost your health, your peace, your sense of self. That's not loyalty, it's self-abandonment. Carl Jung said, "The greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parent." And maybe that's where this people-pleasing began. You learned to be what others needed, to carry what others couldn't, to shrink so others could feel bigger. But you are no longer that child. And it's no longer your responsibility to keep everyone else comfortable. Your responsibility now is to take up space, to protect your time, to honor your needs, even when no one else validates them. Saying no is not rude, it's clear. It's a complete sentence. You don't need to soften it with apologies. You don't owe anyone a report card of your energy levels. If something doesn't feel right, stretches you too thin, or pulls you away from what truly matters, you are allowed, no, expected, to decline. Building a life that honors your truth instead of other people's demands requires boundaries. You are allowed to rest, not because you earned it through exhaustion, but because you are a living being who deserves recovery. You are allowed to leave texts on read, not to punish anyone, but because your nervous system cannot sustain constant connection. You are allowed to prioritize silence, to cancel plans, to be unavailable without guilt. That doesn't make you unreliable, it makes you real. Overcommitting might make you feel needed, useful, validated, but it eventually makes you invisible, even to yourself. You start forgetting what you want, what excites you, what actually matters. Your schedule fills with everyone else's needs, and slowly, your identity becomes a collage of other people's expectations. You are not here to be everything to everyone. You are here to be aligned, fully, with the few things that matter most. Peace isn't selfish, it's sacred. It's what allows you to show up fully, with presence rather than resentment, with depth rather than depletion. When you say yes to everything, you dilute your power. You scatter your energy across a dozen things, showing up halfway for all of them. But when you say no, even to good things, you create space to say yes to the things that truly belong to you. That's not selfish. That's wisdom. It's hard, especially if you've been wired to earn approval through service. But each time you choose yourself, you rewrite the story. You teach yourself that your needs matter, that your rest is valid, that you don't need to break to be loved. Start small. A pause before every yes. One clear boundary where there was previously a blurred line. A single moment of reflection before committing out of habit. You won't unlearn people-pleasing in a day, but you can start by listening to the quiet voice inside you that says, "I don't want to do this," and honoring it rather than overriding it. That voice is you, the real you, waiting for you to come home. You don't need to be available 24/7 to be good. You don't need to justify your rest. You don't need to break before pausing. Be honest with your energy, your time, and your limits. That's where peace begins. Not with productivity, not with sacrifice, but with presence. And when you live from that place, everything changes. Slowly, steadily. You breathe easier, sleep better, speak with clarity, stand taller. Let go of the version of yourself that believed being loved meant being endlessly useful. Let go of the story that your worth depends on being everything to everyone. It never did. You were always enough, even when you had nothing to give. And now it's time to give back to yourself. Your time, your space, your voice. That's not selfish. That's sacred, and it's long overdue. 14. The identity you outgrew. There's a quiet, almost disorienting discomfort that creeps in when you start to feel like a stranger inside the identity you've been wearing for years. Maybe you were the loud one, the funny one, the dependable one, the ambitious one, and once that version of you worked. It served a purpose. It helped you connect, helped you cope, helped you feel safe in a world that demanded clear labels, tidy boxes, and predictable roles. But now, something doesn't feel right. You show up the same way, speak the same words, follow the same routines, and yet it all feels hollow. You can't quite name it, but you know you've outgrown the role. And here's the paradox. No one really tells you that outgrowing a version of yourself can sometimes hurt more than leaving a person behind. Because that old identity isn't just a habit, it's who people know you as. It's how they've praised you, accepted you, counted on you, and shedding it makes you feel exposed. So when you begin to shed that skin, people notice, and not always kindly. They might say you've changed, that you're distant, less fun, less ambitious, less available. And maybe in some ways that's true, but not in the way they think. You're not abandoning who you were. You're stepping into who you're becoming. And yes, there's grief in that shift, because letting go of an old identity means letting go of comfort. Even if that comfort wasn't always healthy, even if it drained you, even if it held you back, it was familiar, predictable, safe. But growth doesn't care about comfort. Growth asks more. It asks you to leave the well-worn path to forge a new one with your bare hands, with courage, with patience, with curiosity. That's why it can feel lonely sometimes. Evolution often requires isolation before integration. Carl Jung wrote, "In each of us there is another whom we do not know. And that unknown part, the one that feels foreign and unfamiliar, is often the next version of ourselves trying to emerge. But we resist it. Not because we don't want to grow, but because we're afraid we won't be loved once we do. We've been conditioned to believe that our identity is our worth. Stop being the achiever and you'll be overlooked. Stop being the people pleaser and you'll be abandoned. Stop being the fixer and you'll be forgotten." But that's fear talking, not truth. You don't owe the world a consistent performance. You don't have to keep playing the same role just because people liked it. Identity is not a contract you cannot break. You are allowed to change, to soften, to slow down, to speak up, to disappear for a while and return transformed. You are allowed to outgrow places, people, and mindsets, and you don't need anyone's permission to do it. The most dangerous thing you can do is remain loyal to an old version of yourself out of guilt or obligation. Just because that version helped you survive doesn't mean it will help you thrive. You can honor it, thank it for getting you this far, and still move forward. Survival mode is temporary. Growth is your destination. At some point, you must put the armor down and learn to live, not just endure. Growth will not always be noticed. There will be no applause, no acknowledgement. Sometimes it looks like simply choosing not to react the way you always did. Saying no when the old you would have said yes. Walking away instead of trying to prove yourself. Remaining silent instead of performing, explaining, or justifying. Strange at first, yes, but in that stillness, the next version of you quietly unfolds. And here's the truth few speak. The people around you might not celebrate your growth because it forces them to confront their own stagnation. When you stop playing the old role, they must rewrite their script. Not everyone is ready for that. Some may try to pull you back into the version of yourself they can predict and understand. But your evolution was never meant to make others comfortable. It was meant to make you whole. Some relationships may fade. That will hurt. But what you gain is far more valuable. Alignment, integrity, peace. The quiet knowing that you are no longer pretending. You are no longer dimming your light, twisting yourself, performing to be accepted. You are living from truth, even if that truth is still emerging. Meeting yourself where you are now, not 5 years ago. Not where others expect you to be in this season, this mindset, this heart, is a radical act of self-honesty. It may feel like starting over, but in reality, it's starting for real. Each time you choose authenticity over approval, you get closer to a life built for you. Not a life built to survive, to appease, to perform. Breathe. Take your time. Let the old version of you rest. Let the roles you no longer relate to fade into memory. There is no need to explain your shift. True growth rarely requires a speech. It requires space. And you, more than anyone, deserve to take up that space fully, unapologetically, without guilt. You are not lost. You are not broken. You are no longer limited. And in that freedom, you begin again. 15. The fear of starting over. Starting over is not a mark of failure. It is a mark of courage, the kind of courage that few recognize because it takes a rare honesty to admit this isn't right. This needs to change. And it takes even more bravery to act on that truth. We live in a world that glorifies persistence as a straight line. Once you commit to a path, the unspoken rule says, keep going no matter what. Even if it feels wrong, even if the road gets darker, heavier, more detached from who you truly are. People will say, be consistent. Stick it out. Don't quit. And while consistency has its place, blind persistence can become the very trap it pretends to prevent. Sometimes continuing is the cage, and starting over is the key. We associate beginnings with loss, with wasted time, with shame. We look at the years spent in the wrong job, the wrong relationship, the wrong habits, the wrong version of ourselves, and we whisper to ourselves, was it all for nothing? But what if it wasn't? What if every misstep, every detour, every wrong turn was preparing you to start again? Smarter, stronger, wiser, more aligned with your truth. Starting over is not returning to zero. It is returning to yourself, equipped with experience, perspective, and the lessons only time can teach. The fear of starting over is really the fear of the unknown. It is the fear of releasing the familiar, even if that familiarity has been painful. We say to ourselves, I've come this far. I can't just walk away. But here is the truth. If where you've arrived doesn't feel right, why stay? Who are you proving anything to? Pivoting isn't weakness. It is wisdom. It is listening to the quiet voice of your soul rather than the loud chorus of expectations, ego, or obligation. That voice whispers, this isn't it, and it deserves your attention. Seneca said, every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end. And that is the part we struggle with, letting go. Even if it hurts, even if it shatters comfort, even if it feels like leaving behind a piece of yourself, there is safety in what we know, even if it stifles us. Starting over means stepping into the unformed, embracing uncertainty, and becoming a beginner again. And for most of us, that is terrifying. But freedom, real freedom, is always found on the other side of fear. Starting over doesn't always require dramatic gestures. Sometimes it is subtle. Waking up one morning and deciding not to tolerate disrespect anymore. Saying no to a job that looks impressive but feels wrong in your gut. Ending a friendship that drains more than it nourishes. Sometimes it's not quitting a career or moving across the country. Sometimes it is simply allowing yourself to dream again after years of believing you were not allowed to. We delay these resets because we convince ourselves we are too far in, too old, too committed, too tied to past choices. That thinking chains you to a life you no longer want, stealing the one thing that truly matters, your peace. If the life you are living costs you your peace, it is too expensive. And no amount of should have, or what if can justify staying stuck while your soul quietly asks for a new path. You do not need permission to change direction. You do not need a dramatic breakdown to validate a reset. You can simply decide today that the version of you who arrived here is not the one who will take you forward. This is not betrayal. It is evolution. It is growth. Starting over is not about changing everything around you. It is about changing the intention behind everything. You may remain in the same city, the same job, the same routine, but your mindset, your boundaries, your purpose can shift. And when they do, everything around you shifts too. Because when you show up differently, the world responds differently. Opportunities appear that were invisible before. People aligned with your values gravitate toward you. The things you once chased start to lose their grip. You move with clarity instead of confusion. And yes, the beginning may feel lonely. Your circle may look smaller. There may be no roadmap. You will stumble, doubt, and long to return to the familiar. But keep moving. Keep stepping. Every person whose life you admire, every story that moved you, started with someone refusing to live the same day repeatedly. They embraced the discomfort of beginning over the numbness of staying the same. And the hardest step is always the first one, packing up the version of yourself you've outgrown and walking into the unknown. Once you do, you begin to feel light again. Not because the path is easy, but because it is yours. That kind of ownership, that kind of alignment generates momentum. Slowly, quietly, the fog lifts. You begin to see who you are becoming. Not someone entirely new, but someone more honest, more whole, more aligned with your truth. Don't fear the reset. Don't let the inner critic tell you it's too late, too risky, too selfish. Listen instead to the part of you that's exhausted from pretending, that's weary from performing. That voice knows the way. Let it lead. You are not meant to shrink yourself to fit a life that no longer fits. You were meant to expand, to evolve, to rise. And sometimes the only way to do that is to begin again. Even if your hands shake, even if your voice trembles, even if no one understands. Begin anyway. This is not the end. It is an invitation to become everything you were too afraid to be. You are not lost. You are simply becoming. And here is the lesson that threads through all 15 reflections we've explored. Life is not about perfection. It is not about holding on to old versions, chasing approval, or measuring yourself against someone else's timeline. Life is about alignment. Alignment with your values, your growth, your truth. It's about knowing when to let go, when to pivot, when to rest, when to speak, and when to remain silent. It's about cultivating the inner world that sustains you, not the outer world that judges you. Every fear we face, every habit we release, every identity we outgrow, every moment we pause to choose ourselves instead of pleasing the world, these are the acts that build resilience, wisdom, and genuine freedom. Courage is quiet. Growth is often invisible. Transformation rarely asks for applause. And yet, it shapes the entire trajectory of your life. So as this journey concludes, remember, your life is yours to steward. Protect your energy, honor your boundaries, trust your inner voice. Do not fear beginnings, endings, or resets. Walk your path intentionally with patience, with self-compassion, and with the courage to become the person you were always meant to be. Because the greatest victory in life is not in proving yourself to the world. It is in showing up fully, authentically and quietly, day after day, for yourself. And when you do, everything else falls into place.